Hi, I'm Tara and welcome to another Crafting with Curly Cues video. Today I'm going to show you a double pane shaker window where you can see all the way through the front of the card onto the inside through the shaker panel, and we're going to do an emboss resist technique for the background of the front panel. I'm going to use this amazing Lawn Fawn set. This is from the Stamp Timber Simon Says Stamp exclusive last year. This is Feathered Friends. I love this set. I think it's so cute. I was inspired today by the Lawnscaping Challenge, which is rainbow, so I'm going to use these distress inks here. I've got some spiced marmalade, some squeezed lemonade, salty ocean, picked raspberry, and dusty concord. And I'm just going to take this large Hello Friend sentiment. You can see that I've already got a front panel cut out there. I did use my Cricut to go ahead and make this shape. It's on some watercolor paper. I just use Canson watercolor paper that I buy at Walmart. I don't have anything fancy, but I really like it. And I'm just going to emboss the front of this panel with the sentiment here, this Hello Friend. I love it. It's nice and large, and I love the two different fonts that it uses. And then I'm going to take the little feathers that are in the stamp set, and I'm going to stamp all around and just create a really colorful background here. Well, first it's going to be a white background so that I can put colors on top of it, but I'm just using my Versamark sticky ink, and then I've got my Ranger Superfine White embossing powder there that I love. So I'm go ahead and starting in with those feathers, and what I do as I'm stamping these is I do kind of pause every couple feathers and I sprinkle some more embossing powder on because I can't see where the heck I'm stamping, and knowing me, I would just think that the same spot looked really good over and over and stamp that feather right on top of itself. So I went ahead and put the embossing powder on there, even though I'm not going to heat set it until I'm all done with my stamping. So I take the two different size feathers and I just fill in the space on the front panel till I get it to a point that I like it. And then I will go ahead and heat set this. I really love doing this technique. It makes you look like a magnificent artist with very little effort. I think it always ends up turning out really cool. Something that a lot of people kind of don't expect. If someone's not really a card maker, they always kind of look at it and go, how did you do that? And you're like, those are my trade secrets. I'm not going to tell. But really, it's this really great, simple technique. So now I'm going to go ahead and heat set that. It does take a minute to get everything heat set since it's a pretty large area here. I think that I maybe need to upgrade my heat gun at some point. Mine doesn't get quite as hot as I would like it to, but it does the trick. So what am I complaining about, right? And I have to tell you guys, I just finally got my Ranger craft mat there that I'm working on. I've watched enviously all the other videos and finally found one on Amazon that was really affordable. So I snagged it, and it works pretty dang well to do this blending. So I'm going to start with some Salty Ocean, and I don't really have a plan where I'm going to put these colors. Like I said, the challenge is rainbow, so I am just trying to make this bad boy nice and colorful and vibrant and summertime, and so I just am kind of picking and choosing some random spots. I don't want it to be like a striped rainbow. I want it to be just kind of splashes of color. So I start with my Salty Ocean here, and I grabbed a separate piece of paper because I'm really bad about putting my inky fingers on top of my other colors and messing it all up. So I wanted to have that ready so that I could use that to avoid that issue. Here's that squeezed lemonade, and I found when I put it on top of that Salty Ocean, I really loved the green that resulted when the two mixed together. And it really made it cool because I was able to create a whole rainbow here and only use like 3 or 4 colors because I got some really great mixing. You'll see I don't even end up using that dusty concord because the Salty Ocean and the picked raspberry blend together to make such a beautiful purple that I didn't even need the purple ink. So now you can see that I'm using that piece of paper to hold my paper down so that I don't put my fingers directly onto the watercolor cardstock here. And again, that's just to prevent some unsightly fingerprints from smudging on there. It's a good trick when using the distress inks because they stay really wet for a really long time, so it's really nice to take a little precaution against that. So here you can kind of see some of those colors starting to blend together. I really love these inks. I mean, so pretty. Look at that purple color that is forming when I put that Salty Ocean and picked raspberry together. I mean, you can't do that on purpose. It's like sheer accident, amazing stuff happening, and that's what I love about crafting, are the amazing accidents that happen. So I felt like my squeezed lemonade was getting a little bit overshadowed by some of these stronger colors, so I'm coming back in here and putting that on. I'm really wanting to make sure that I get good strong color on top of all that embossing that I did so that you can really see the white, especially over the sentiment. You got to make sure you can read the sentiment on the card. So I wanted to make sure I did that. The other thing that I kind of did was made sure that I put like colors next to each other that I thought would blend well. I'm not a color expert. I don't have a color wheel. I don't know which colors are complements and which colors are whatever other color terminology there is out there. But I did, like, I knew that purple or the blue and the pink would make purple, so I wanted to put that next to each other, and I knew that the orange and the yellow would blend pretty well together, and I was going for maybe some green there, which worked out. But I mean, just kind of, that was the only kind of forethought that I had in planning my layout here. So now I've got a whole bunch of color on there, and I'm really liking the way that this is looking. So I think that I'm going to be done. And then I take this little frame that I have also cut out of my Cricut, and it fits right on top of that open window panel there. I'm just taking my thumb and wiping over some of the embossing because some of the ink was sitting on top of it, and I didn't want it to dry there. And I decided that the pink would be a good color to pull out and make a focal point on the frame. So I am just taking my picked raspberry, and I'm doing one solid color on this whole frame with my picked raspberry. And I actually have two of these frames because the way that this card works is that the shaker window is going to see all the way through the front panel. So in order to make the back of the inside of the card not look funky, I cut a second frame so that it can mimic the front when you open it up. And I just distress inked both of those frames in the same picked raspberry. So you can see how that sits nice and cute on top there. So I saved the negative space when I cut this out, and this is where I'm going to make the inside panel of my card. So this panel is actually going to be glued on the inside of the card where you would write your greeting to the recipient. And what I've done right now is just popped it inside that opening. And I'm going to go ahead and take my little powder buddy there and make sure that everything is nice and static free when I emboss these sweet little birds on top of this inside panel. So you're going to be able to see through the shaker all the way to the inside to these cute little birds sitting on a wire. So I'm taking some Inka Dinka Doo masking paper, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp those little birds right onto that. I just grabbed, this happens to be Lawn Fawn cranberry ink, but I just needed something that wasn't Versamark so I could see it on there. And I just stamped them on there so that I can create a mask for these cute little birds here. I am going to be distress inking the inside also for a nice consistent look, so I wanted to make sure that I could do the birds and the background separately, and I'll show you how I do that in a little bit. So this is the wire that comes in the stamp set for the birds to sit on. I just flop that on my craft mat there so that it can go where it wants instead of me trying to make the curve all perfect. And sorry, I had to go out of frame here because I could not see to line up with the birdie's feet there because they're stamped in Versamark and you can't see them. So I had to get my big old noggin right over the top there to get that lined up perfectly. So now I'm going to emboss that in the same white powder that I embossed the front of the card on. You can kind of see when you tilt it up those sweet little birds there. And I'll show you a trick here because I kind of, in spite of my due diligence with my powder bag, which I usually forget, I did get some embossing powder all over it. If you just take a dry paintbrush, you can just flick that stuff right off there and you're good to go. Kind of especially important when you're doing emboss resist so that you don't end up with resisted areas that you didn't want. So now I'm going to take my craft knife and cut these little birds out, and that's going to give me both a mask and the negative of the mask. So first I'm going to put the mask on top of those birds and I'm going to squish it down real nice and tight. These little images like this sometimes, and you'll see what happens, this little wing folds up, and that happens to me a lot, but just squish it down, do the best you can. I'm going to use some tumbled glass and some peacock feathers to create a little sky for these birds, and I'm just going in with my lighter tumbled glass up on the top. There's his little wing is flipping up. I'm like, no, stay down. That always happens. I end up with like one blue wing that just blends in with the sky. But, you know, whatever. It's fine. Nobody notices but me, I'm sure. I'm pretty picky of my own work. And then I take the peacock feathers and I'm going to go in at the bottom and just create a little bit of a darker bottom. And the main reason I did this is because I wanted that little wire that they're sitting on to really show, and the tumbled glass is pretty light. So I did put fingerprints all over it. So now I'm going back in with my paper and my tumbled glass again to kind of blend out some of those pink fingerprints I got on there. So now I peel up my mask, and what I'm going to do now is take the negative, and you can see how those little birdies are nice and white because they were masked, and I'm going to mask off the blue sky that I just created and squish that down real good around the birds so that I can use distress ink to color the birds as well. So I'm going to go in with some mustard seed here, and I originally pulled out some wild honey to do the kind of deeper accent color, and I decided when I started here, you can see that there wasn't enough contrast. I wanted a little bit more contrast there. So I busted out that spice marmalade again and went in right at the bottom of the birds and just created a little bit darker just to kind of match the whole theme I'd kind of been going with of the darker on the bottom and lighter up at the top. So, and what actually happens is that the craft gods decided when I was done here and my mask moved and I peeled it up and I was like, oh, okay, I guess that looks great. So I listened, I heeded their warning, and I stopped inking at that point. And then I took a orange gel pen and colored in their little beaks because I don't have a distress inker small enough to get in those little beaks. So I went ahead and cheated there. So now I'm just taking some plain old water, spritzing it in my hand, and then flicking it on top of both of these pieces. This is one of my favorite things to do with distress inks. It creates this really awesome, like tie-dyed bleached look. If you let the water sit there for a few seconds, I usually go at least 30 seconds to a minute just to let it get nice and soaked in. And then you dab it off with a paper towel. It creates these really amazing bleach spots where the water wicked the ink away. And it just adds a lot of depth and dimension and I think whimsy to a project. And I really enjoy my projects to be whimsical. So it's actually one of my favorite words, whimsical. I think of unicorns and fluffy clouds and Mary Poppins, so I just really love it. So there are my completed front panels here, and now I'm going to go ahead and start assembling this card. So I'm going to take that front panel and set it on the front of my card base. This is some Nina Solar White 110-pound cardstock, and I've already cut it down to be an A2 size card, and I'm just going to trace where that window is and use my X-Acto knife to cut that out of there. So now I'm just making sure that it cut out correctly and I don't have any funky lines hanging out there, because even though I traced it, Lord knows I can mess that up. So I just got an ATG, I have to say, and I am still learning how to use this big old clunker here. It's amazing and I love it, but I'm having a little trouble. So you'll notice a couple times my glue goes kind of funky. So now I'm just using that hole in the front of the panel that I cut to basically stick that inside panel right on the inside of the card. That way I know it's going to be lined up with my shaker window when I get that all constructed, and you'll be able to see through. So now you can see there how that's kind of coming together, how that's going to look when we're done. And now I'm taking those pink frames that we made, and I've got some actually glitter cardstock left over from another project, and I'm just putting some behind so those little holes in the corners were filled in. And then I'm going to take my Zig glue pen, and I have kind of a broader point Zig glue pen. I really need to get one of the super fine ones, but this one works really well for small areas also. And I'm just going to glue that frame down right on the front of that piece that we've created with all those distress inks. I really like the way that the distress ink frame looks on top of the distress ink background, as opposed to using maybe colored cardstock. It's just got like the exact same hue and that's kind of soft look that you get when you do distress inking, especially on watercolor. So now I'm taking some acetate and I'm just cutting a couple pieces out that's going to fit behind the two windows. Now you need 2 pieces of acetate for this type of card because we're going to put one here on the front panel of the card, and then we're also going to stick one on the front of the card base. So again, I'm just going to adhere that right to the back of my front panel using my Zig glue pen here. I don't usually do this with a Zig glue pen, but I had it out, so I kind of just ended up doing everything with it. So it was a good little test of what the Zig glue pen can do. So now I'm going to put the other piece of acetate directly on the front of the card. And this seems kind of weird until you think about it for a minute, and we're going to cover up the front of the card with the front panel, so that makes sense. The first time I made one of these, I put it on the inside of the card, and then I had a lot of cleanup to do to try to make it so you couldn't see it in there. So just a little tip through trial and error. And then I'm going to use my 3M foam tape to go ahead and foam up the back of that and make sure there's no little creases. And then in the Simon Says Stamp card kit for August, this beautiful Martha Stewart confetti came in it. It's like this amazing rainbow iridescent stars and hearts. So I put some of that in there. That's part of why I only have 1 layer of Scotch tape, because I didn't need it to be super thick with a lot of sequins. I knew I was going to put this small little confetti in there, but I really love the way the colors of this confetti look with that pretty front panel that we've created. And then I'm just going to line that up there. Go ahead and smash that on the front, and I went ahead and adhered the inside frame to the inside of the card, and I'll show you that here in a minute how that works. So you can see there that you can see all the way through that shaker window, but then when you close it, there's those little birdies sitting on the wire. And so now you can see how it's going to look on the inside. Oh, it looks like I actually cut the inside out. I apologize. Here's a picture of the inside, and you can see how you can see right through there. So I hope you guys enjoyed yourself. If you liked what you see, then go ahead and hit subscribe. I'm also going to link here to a couple more videos that have similar background techniques, so go ahead and check those out. I am on Facebook, Curly Cues, and you can see all the supplies listed that I used here on my blog at curlycues.blogspot.com. Thanks, guys. Bye.